Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hockel, for presenting us on the Catholic curriculum and the need for a Catholic high school here in the Archdiocese of Denver. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, a little bit louder. Here we go. All right. I know I look like a high schooler that just goes to the high school, and in fact, I remember the first day that the high school was opening and the students were coming, and I have two older brothers that love to pick on me in a lot of ways, and they were saying, you know what, Father CJ, you should just dress up as a high schooler for that first day and just see how long it takes for them to realize that you're the priest. Well, very good. Well, I'm from Loveland, Colorado, and I have a huge passion for Catholic education itself. In fact, I myself went to a Catholic school, K through 8th grade, and I see the value that education has and the potential that it has for all the youth, all the students, what it does for the mind, and what that does for life in general. And my graduating class was 18 students from that Catholic school, and 3 of us today are still practicing Catholic. And one of them is Mr. Hockel's wife. And it's kind of providential that God has brought us here together, the same class, the same people to work for God's glory through Catholic education, especially in this high school that we are building together. But I see the potential that Catholic education has. Because education is not just about the facts of passing that on to another student. In fact, education, the Latin word is educare, which means to lead out of darkness. What you do in education is to tell somebody that there is light and reason to live their life. There is meaning for their life in general, and there is something to fight for. This is what education is missing in our society today. This is why I think it's so important. And I bring up the story of what Mr. Hockel was talking about with the high schoolers. So I've been working a lot with the high school here, but also the high schoolers here in Windsor. We've been doing a youth group. And we do kind of a bi-weekly thing. So one night will just be pure hanging out. And then on another night, we'll have apologetics, and I'll lead that. And we've been getting about 20 to 25 students, and a couple nights ago, I was teaching on faith, science, and reason. And at the beginning of the apologetics, I said that there's two sets of 3 questions that we will be answering. One specifically relates to Catholics, right? Does God exist? Is Jesus God? And did Jesus Christ give authority to the Catholic Church? We will be talking about these in apologetics, but then I also say there's 3 other questions that are essential for knowing what life is about, for knowing the meaning of life. And those 3 questions are, what is there? What is there in all of reality? What is there in myself? Why do I have this love, this desire for love, happiness, whatever it is? What is there? Second question, what do I do with it? How do I conform my life to the truths about what reality is? To the truths about what reality speaks to me? And the third question, what does this all say about who I am? What does this all say about who I am, where I am right now, and where I am going? What does this say about my life having meaning in general? And I lay out these questions, I said, we're going to go over these. And then I was curious, though. I was curious, these 25 high schoolers that go to public schools, and I asked them, how many of you have ever been presented with just these 3 questions about talking about the meaning of life in your public schools? One student raised their hand, and they were a student who goes to the Chesterton Academy. The others did not raise their hands, but then I asked them a follow-up question. How many of you wish you had talked about these? How many of you wish that in your school, in your education, that you would talk about these fundamental questions of what life is about, what meaning itself is about. And every single student raised their hand. The youth have one question on their minds, which is foundational. And it's a question that every single human being in the existence of the world has asked. And that is, does my life have meaning? The youth want to know. The youth want to know, does my life have meaning? I myself, when I went to that Catholic school, I went to a public high school afterwards. And I went to, in senior year, I went through a really deep, hard depression. And I was asking a lot of questions about life in general. And I remember sitting in class, and I would sit through all the math classes, I would sit through all the science classes, and honestly, I was fascinated by it all. But when I was going through that depression, I had just one question on my mind that I was asking in those classes. They could have been presenting on the stars, they could have been presenting on the most fascinating things that science is talking about, but I myself was asking one question on my heart. Does my life have meaning, and is my suffering redemptive? Is my suffering redemptive? The suffering that I'm going through in my life, in the end, is that redeemed? And what public schools fail to answer is that question specifically. Last year, I was assigned to St. Thomas More, and I was giving a talk right after the Highlands Ranch shooting, the STEM shooting. And I was giving a talk to another set of public school students, high school students. And one of the girls raised their hands, this is in the summer, and she just asked a simple question. She said, why is there so much suicide? Why is teen suicide so high? Why are there so many school shootings that are happening right now? And I looked at her and I said, well, let's think about this in what the world is saying to the youth. And I said, if there is no God, there is no meaning. I said, if there is no meaning, there's three options, really, in the end. I said, either A, you create meaning for yourself, which is ultimately not having meaning at all. B, you say the suffering is so great that I don't even want to encounter it, so I exit the world. I commit suicide. Or C, kind of the option between, is I don't want to think about all the suffering, but I don't want to think about the consequences of that, so I medicate for the rest of my life so that I don't have to think about these deep questions. I think that's what the youth are facing today. Notice that in the public sphere, what the youth are fighting for are policies which enable them to medicate for the rest of their life, to allow them to do whatever they want so that they don't have to ultimately think about these questions. Because the reality is that our public schools fail to even mention that life has meaning. Our public schools fail to mention that in the end, your suffering is redeemed. That in the end, there is hope. And afterwards, I gave this talk at St. Thomas More to these youth, and it was so exciting not to just see them come alive in the sense that there is hope in their life alone, but to see them come alive in the sense of having something to now fight for in the world. I had two boys come up to me and they said that they were entering the Army next year. And they said, Deacon CJ, why doesn't the Vatican have an army? Because we would join that. And I was like, yeah, you're so excited. And then I looked at them and I said, would you ever want to consider becoming a priest? And they looked at me and they said, pray for me. Pray for them. The youth want something to fight for. And the youth want something to fight for that is more than just medicating for the rest of their life because somebody has told them that there is no hope in the end. That ultimately there is no meaning. That there is no redemptive suffering. The youth want to fight for something. And it's amazing to see when you present the truths of the Catholic faith, when you present to them that God is real, that Jesus Christ is Lord, that Jesus Christ gave authority to the Catholic Church, and that he has meaning for your life, in this life and the world to come. Something in them comes alive, and I see it, and that's why I love to teach them. I love to present to them these truths. That's why I teach apologetics to the high schoolers, to see them come alive, not only to see that their life has meaning, but they now have something to fight for in the midst of the world. They long for that. And we have to give them a fighting chance. We have to give them the space to encounter these deep questions about human life, about existence itself. We have to enable them to know that there is something worth fighting for. And I think this is why John Paul II was so fascinated with the youth. This is why he did so many things with World Youth Day and was speaking to the youth. And throughout my life, I had heard this quote that says, he who owns the youth gains the world. And I always thought that that was John Paul II who said that. Ultimately, that is Hitler. Hitler is the one who said, he who owns the youth gains the world. What we're building is not just something to send a child to let them know that there is a way, a truth, a life. But to let them know that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and that he is worth fighting. Let that be a hope to us. That when you do present the truths of the Catholic faith to a youth, that they become alive, that they want to fight for him. They want to fight for his kingdom. Let that be hope to us that we can, in the education of the youth, when it is done well, can inspire something to re-evangelize the culture. To allow the culture to once again proclaim that Jesus Christ is Lord, that there is hope, that the students and the youth want to fight for something. Our mission is not to just say that there's a way, a truth, and a life. Our mission is to allow them to be proactive, to not just send them into college as something that they just go to on Sundays, but to go into college with the framework of fighting for a kingdom. We want our youth to be proactive about the faith, and we don't want to be reactive about trying to win them back once they get into college, which is, I think, what we're seeing a lot. And I think that what I've seen already in the Chesterton Academy, when I see what is going on in the classroom, I see something that's different than the education I received in my own Catholic school at St. John the Evangelist. Because what happens in the classroom here with the classical curriculum and with the way that the teachers present is that the youth are not only presented with the truth, but they learn to own it themselves. It's amazing. They can't raise their hand. They have to stand up and say what they actually think about the truths. And from day one, we were asking questions such as, what is love? What is God? What are all these things that really have to do with the meaning of life? And to hear their answers. And then to hear their classmates say to them, no, I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong because of this. It makes them own what they believe so that they can be proactive. So when then they leave the school, they can actually have something to fight for. Our public schools are done. They no longer give our youth in our culture a fighting chance. And we're seeing that. Catholic education is the future of our youth. We have to get back to the roots of it. And this is why we're so passionate about this high school that we're building. We're passionate about it, but we need help. We've already, and Liz will talk about this, we're already trying to make it so that there's so much affordability already built into it, so that we can get as close to $6,000 as we can. But I already personally know families who have told me that they can't even afford that they would send their child to the John Paul II High School, but they can't even afford the $6,000. And what I can't see, though, is that that money is the only thing that's holding them back. We can't have the youth go to public schools anymore. It's failing them. It's failing our culture. We need to draw as many youth into the high school as possible to allow them to see the truth, to allow them to conform their lives to that truth, to allow them to know that there is meaning in life, and to help them to know that there is, in the end, something worth fighting for. Thank you so much, and I bring up Liz Ye to present now about our campaign options to make this a reality. Thank you.